Our panel, I'm John Shinholster, President and co-founder of the McShin Foundation in Richmond, Virginia. I'm also a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorders. For me, that means I like to stay clean and sober because I'm old school, over 39 years. And I'm very excited to be here, and we're going to just introduce ourselves. Carol?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carol McDade, and I am the co-founder of both the McShin Foundation and Capital Decisions, which is a government relations firm in Washington, D.C. that's dedicated to advocacy in the addiction, mental health, and especially in the recovery space.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Mitchell. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am also a person in sustained recovery from a substance use disorder. I am the outreach director at the McShin Foundation. I also found my recovery through the McShin Foundation. So I came through a jail program, and here I am today with these fine folks. I'll tell more about that later.
There you go. And a little shout out to our CEO, Honesty Liller, who was scheduled to be here but couldn't make it because she's recovering from COVID and a little slow recovery process. But anyway, moving right along. She certainly sends her love, though. What you're going to learn today is we're going to just kind of go through how we created McShin, some of the growing pains we had along the way, some things we did right, some things we could probably do over and still might be able to do over. But your takeaway and walk away is we hope you will be inspired and empowered to keep doing what you're doing or start something maybe you're not doing. And as you see, we're going to go through a few slides here. And the first one is just that's our building right now where we're stationed at in Richmond. That's very typical of most RCOs around the nation, I do believe. And really, kick it off, how we got started, the short version is, we were old timers in recovery watching people fall through the cracks. And myself and Carol and a few other, I'm going to call them addicts because we were at a camp out, a 12-step fellowship camp out. We were sitting around a campfire on a Saturday night thinking, we just got to do something. And this was in 2004. It was on a Saturday night. And the previous 4 years, running with Carol, being married to Carol, I got a good picture of what was taking place in our nation. And, living through the treatment center era of the 80s and 90s and seeing the buildup of the criminal justice system and just the way our community was and how we were treating addiction, in my assessment, was pathetic, and we needed to do something. We had knowledge of William White and those monologues he was writing, and some RCOs were popping up across America, and we're sitting around his campfire, and we said, man, we got to open up an RCO. And lo and behold, on Monday morning, I'm driving to the lawyer to start this thing. I call Carol. She goes, I said, I'm going to the lawyers to start this RCO. She says, what are you talking about? And I said, we discussed it over the campfire on Saturday night. And then she reminded me of the coffee shop, which didn't go good. I said, this is different. This is a God thing. This ain't self-will. And so I'm walking in the lawyer's office. We came up with the name McShin, Carol McDade, John Shinholster. That's where the name came from. We started in a 56-square-foot office that we rented, and within 6 months, we moved into that building you saw us in. And, in the PowerPoint, it says develop a plan, have a mission statement, and the truth is we had nothing but heart, passion, and desire. No budget, no plan, absolutely nothing. And that can drive people crazy. And Carol, you want to add some content to this?
Yeah, I think that what also was kind of a motivator was that we were running out of couches at our house because John was bringing, everybody home, which I was on board for and had been, helping people in recovery. We had a 23-day waiting list at the time in our state for any type of addiction service at all. And at the time, Medicaid only covered addiction for pregnant women and women with children. So we were dealing with, we needed to save ourselves kind of a thing. And that really, would I have liked to have had a business plan and picked out our board and all that before John filed for the 501c3? But, he gets things done. And oftentimes not in novel ways, so.
And not only that, but you got to realize that a little bit of my background was I was a successful contractor in the community, so I knew how to. I'm an entrepreneur. I knew how to earn a living and make money and create funding. And I'm also a Marine. Some of you may not know I'm a Marine Corps veteran and deployed 3 times, got clean in the Marine Corps. So I have no fear when it comes to doing new things. And that's right. And we got a board of directors together. I went out and I got all my friends in recovery that would trust me and believe in me. We created a board of directors. Carol was at our first board meeting, and then she quickly resigned and said, look, I'd rather be married to you than be a board member. But don't think a day hasn't gone by that we don't talk and collaborate and come up with great ideas and whatnot. And the funding piece, kind of weird. I thought if we started this resource center, people would donate to us, and but that's just not really the way it turned out. We quickly realized we had to create a funding stream, and one way we did that was we quickly added recovery housing and sober living to our organization. I opened my first sober home in 1985, so I had a lot of experience with recovery residences and sober homes. And I knew treatment back then was very expensive and they had to pay out of pocket. So we created a very simple, as families were dropping kids off at our recovery center, they weren't coming back, picking them back up.
and at our house.
And so, how are we going to fund this? So we started screening people for resources and say, can you afford to pay anything? I mean, you're getting ready to blow 20 grand in a 28-day rehab. And back then we were asking, can you give us $1,500 for a month? And your loved one can stay as long as they want to. And back then, the weekly, sober bed was $85 a week. Plus, all of our people were peers in recovery. And even though we only had a couple back in 2004, and we were basically volunteers, keeping in mind, I didn't receive a penny for several years. I was still painting houses and being a contractor and hustling and making this thing work. But it quickly grew. And today, we're in a 15,000 square foot facility. We have a multi-million-dollar a year budget. We have 138 recovery resident beds. And as a result of our energy, Richmond's a metropolitan area of 1.5 million people. Today we have 5 standalone RCOs that operate on their own. You might hear from a couple of those people because they're here in this room in Q&A. And we have over 1,000 recovery beds in the Richmond area. And as a result, they didn't have to build an additional jail in our community. So these RCOs are very powerful. And our model is really simple today. We want that peer engagement, and it's just a beautiful thing. Now, over the years, we sort of built this plane as we flew. You got to realize we created this through love, passion, grit, and determination. Remember, we're pioneers in this space. This didn't exist back then. We came in the era of 3 major pathways to recovery: AA, NA, and Christian faith-based. So we got to be part of everything that's happened since then. And this is a snapshot of what our staff looks like. We have 28 staff members today. And I want you to hear a little bit more from Carol and Nathan on how we actually mobilized our community and some of the things we've done along the way. But take it away, Carol, as far as some of the efforts we've done over the years, because Carol's a genius when it comes to mobilizing. And I got to really watch what she was doing nationwide and how we could utilize that in our communities. And she was, I would have never met Faces and Voices of Recovery, William White, and all that movement stuff taking place. And I just, got to watch her in action nationally, and we were able to use that locally. And then we added Nathan on as our outreach worker and our, our community developer with our policymakers and whatnot. But this is very important subject matter.
Yeah, so I was being, I'm a paid advocate in Washington, D.C. for clients that are in this space, and I was doing all this work and also was a founding board member of Faces and Voices of Recovery and sat on, YPR, and today I'm lucky enough to, work with Ryan and his groups. And I felt like I was doing all this work nationally and then ignoring my own backyard. And that's a creepy feeling to have, putting a face and voice on recovery and then not dealing with the people in your own backyard. And so that was why I was so supportive, even though, I might like to plan ahead and John likes to get her done right away. I really wanted to put to work what I was doing nationally for paid clients and bring those same skills and teach people in our community how to do that. And at the time, you heard a lot from Patrick Kennedy this weekend about the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act. And I was sort of one of his, lieutenants on the ground that was pushing the work out. And many of you over 20 years have been involved in this work. And we're not giving up until it's fully enforced and fully implemented across the country. But these skill sets and the work that you all are here doing today are the heartbeat of one of the things that makes McShin who it is our advocacy work. In addition to the incredible skills John have on that one-on-one peer coaching and recovery residents and help people get jobs and going into jails and prisons, our advocacy is part of our heart. And at the heart of it for me is that I had a family that could pay to get me out of legal trouble and that could send me to a variety of different treatment centers. And millions of Americans aren't that lucky. And I knew I was paying all these insurance premiums and you couldn't access a bit of care for it if you needed to go inpatient at all. So that my own personal experience with this and that having been lucky enough to have family resources, that is what motivates me every single day to work on this parity bill 20 years later. And I'm still as hot on it today as I was when we first started, and I'll be working on that until I get in the grave. But what I have been so proud about with McShin is to help bring along leaders like Nathan Mitchell, who many of you may have gotten a chance to get to know yesterday. And if you haven't gotten a chance to get to know him because he is really an example of those of us who have been around and are a little long in the tooth, really passing the torch to the next generation. And it's just so incredible to see all of you, and I feel so good about the fact that we're leaving it. But I'm gonna let Nathan talk a little bit about what he's been doing at the local and state level in our community to help mobilize recovery in our area.
But before Nathan gives you his short story on how he found us, I want you to understand something. A lot of old timers out here, you felt our frustration. I look out at the room and I see John Winslow sitting there, 45 years sober and in this space, and you get around a guy like that and you watch how he operates. But many of us, we've sat in these meetings and in these rooms that we go to, and we want to do more, we want to help. When we wish we had the resources to do it, we wish we could tell these people where to go. We wish, man, just come see me. I'll get you in front of a doctor. I'll get you sober living. I'll get you in a recovery center. I'll get you peer connection and engagement. Well, by God, we got that today. And we were able to engage somebody like Nathan when the time was right and talk about that engagement and what's going on now.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Carol. The first time I heard the word McShin, it was a cold February morning.
Yeah.
I'm in my jail shoes without socks. And I'd just been extradited from Washington, D.C. to Virginia, and that was a very scary word to me. And I heard the word McShin, and I thought, where in Ireland are these people from?
Donegal, actually.
But the people who were using that word had a smile on their face. They seemed to be doing something that I wasn't quite getting, right? And I think a lot of us know that place. I was hitting that spot of, I don't really want to be around anymore, but I don't quite know how to off. And I'm cold. And so I kind of asked some questions, and I'm in the general population, and I'm like, how do I get over to this McShin pod where they're happy? And I submitted a form. I go over there a couple days later, and the first thing somebody does is look at my feet, and they say, your feet look cold. And in my head, I'm like, the hell does this guy want from me? Leave me alone. I don't want anybody to know, And he says, no. He could tell probably what I was thinking. He said, no, I got you. And he went and got those socks, a pair of socks for me, and he gave me those socks. And I'm gonna cry almost thinking about it now, because that's how I feel, right? Because that was the first time in a very long time that it wasn't a transactional relationship for me, you know? And as I got to experience those couple of weeks that I was with McShin in jail, it was somebody who kept coming in every day, who had been in the same jail, who had been in the same bare feet, I guess, that I'd been in, and kept coming in and sharing that authentic story. And really, my connection with him was that he had the same disease that I have, right? You know, everything else, politics, all that aside, didn't matter, because he came in and he kept showing up and giving me a bit of hope when I certainly didn't have it. And I was mandated to go to Richmond from Northern Virginia, and I'm really grateful, because I thought I'd be there for a 28-day program. And that was about 3.5 years ago. So, yeah.
We don't get clean, we take hostages, baby.
Well, the great thing is now I have a relationship with my mom, and so do these guys. So, so in the work, right, so of course I was there for 3 months. I knew everything, and I left, because, you know, I did, right? I didn't. I came back after 4 months, and after a lot of telling everybody there what they could do with this program, with a lot of fingers and whatnot, they still welcomed me back with open arms. And in fact, not only did they welcome me back, but they gave me a job. And I was herding people from one place to another, and I was the peer on the ground, right? And I continued in that position, and then when the position that I have now came open, I asked for that, and I said, you know, I've identified some of the gaps where I could have perhaps been helped. You know, in pretrial, I was getting high right in the parking lot after I left my officer. She had no idea, but I lost 35 pounds in front of her in 4 months. Guaranteed if one of y'all had been there, you'd have said, come here. You know, I guarantee that, right?
Yeah.
But so that's a gap right there. It's like, where else can we fit in? And so what I love is that, like, I get the space to not only help find the gaps, but I get the space to ask other people, what are the gaps that are missing too? And that's where the Recovery Advocacy Project in Virginia comes in so profoundly for me and for all of us, because of course it's not just about, I love McShin, it's not just about McShin, right? It's about what can we do better for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And what can we do better as a nation, but what can we do better in Virginia? So we have this Virginia Recovery Advocacy Project, right? You know, through Mobilize, you'll talk about that if you're not part of that yet. And we get together, we work on things, we have listening sessions, we say, where are the gaps? How can we fill those? What can we do? What can we work on? And I can tell you, we helped improve legislation for Good Samaritan laws over the past couple of years. That was a big one, right? We helped to get more funding for the Virginia Association of Recovery Residences.
We got Narcan passed 5 years ago.
All these things, right? And this is directly from these guys. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything before I got into it. What I knew is that I had no hope. And when I got here, suddenly I had hope. And a whole bunch of people that when I walk in the door every single day, it's like hugs, 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 right? And there's a piece, and I know I'm talking more than you want, but there's an important piece that I want to stress that I think a lot of us here can relate to. You know, as an organization going through the pandemic that we've just gone through, right? While the treatment centers were turning people away, while the government was shutting down, and while jails were letting people out without proper plans for afterwards and reentry, places like McShin and other organizations kept the doors open. We continued to adapt and accommodate as we needed to, and we never closed the doors. And I think that's incredible.
You know, we can't sit up here and tell the McShin story in 35 minutes and leave 10 minutes for Q&A. But there's some points we want to touch on, and our slides aren't in, you know, the best order maybe, but we're going to hit some really good highlights. But I wanted to make sure we touched on some movement we got in Washington, and we just popped this slide in the last minute. Carol, can you quickly tell folks about this?
Yes, so we've got some activity about finally getting some permanent, stable, and ongoing funding for recovery support services. So you don't have to be like John and I to reach into our own pocket to fund an RCO or a recovery organization of any kind. And so there's a couple things going on. One is there is, in Biden's budget proposal, there is a proposal to take 10% of the substance abuse block grant, their language, not mine, and set it aside for recovery support services. And so you can click on that QR code and you can send a letter to your House and Senate appropriators asking them to support that set aside. You can also send a letter to your single state agency director asking them to support this 10% set aside since the money flows through them. And then you can click on that QR code that's on the slide and send a letter to our member of Congress. So we don't just sit here and BS about you should do this and you should do that. We got our local member of Congress to introduce a bill while we were trying to get a 1-year appropriation for the recovery support set aside. We also had our member of Congress put in a bill to make that permanent, so that every year, year after year, this recovery support set aside would become a permanent part of what had to be funded under the substance abuse block grant. And so we are urging you to take action on these things. People like me who are paid to do this are only as good as the soldiers I have behind me. And you all have been making a difference. I noticed this morning,
There you go.
98 letters had been sent to their people's member of Congress. There are, 435 members of Congress, so we've got a ways to go. So don't leave this conference without acting here. Ask your member of Congress to support this bill. It's only on the House side right now. More to come on that. But I guess, a couple things about advocacy. Grow where you're planted. Don't wait till you get a big fancy grant from Washington or your state. Grow where you're planted. Somebody talked today about looking down at their feet and seeing what resources. Use the soil and the sunlight you have in your backyard to do the advocacy and do the work you can with what you have now. Don't wait. That's what we did at McShin. Was it highly imperfect? Sure. Is it still imperfect? Yeah, but eventually if you keep doing that work, people can feel your authenticity. I mean, everybody stand up right now and give yourself an applause, a hug, a pat on the back, because you have been the addiction safety net in this country during the pandemic. So stand up.
That's right.
Come on now.
I can't even stand up, man. I mean, seriously, how many of y'all think it's a good idea that we deserve our own funding stream for recovery? I mean, it's way overdue.
Yes, but it's up to us to act on it. And so we just wanted to tell you some of the things that we're going on, that we're involved on, and that are national, but local effort and action is necessary in order to make this change.
I want to blow through some things pretty quick. A lot of you notice information, some of you don't, but we're from all over the country, okay? Nobody does this stuff alone. We got RCOs, we got Jimmy McGill from Arkansas up here. We got Kara from Alaska, Chris from Idaho. I mean,
our local friends in the back, Anthony Grimes and David Rook from RCOs and the Virginia Association of Recovery Residences, we all work together as a team.
But the thing is, as you can see, an RCO to me is an organization that can do same-day access, same-day engagement. What good are you if you take a person in, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good if you can talk to somebody, empower them, motivate them, but it's really nice to get them in a sober living that day. It's really nice to have a detox doctor you can take them to that day, or her, and get them detoxed or maintenance or whatever they need. And one way we were able to accomplish a lot of this capacity building in our community, we've done a lot of training. We created training programs. We remember 17 years ago, we really didn't have certified peers or accredited peers or recovery coaching. We wrote a manual on it. And everything McShin's done all these years, we've given to everybody. A week doesn't go by where we don't get a visitor at McShin. And I get a text and a phone call every day. Many of y'all are out here in this room. And it'd be nice if you can contact Peer Center of Excellence. It's a new organization that helps people launch recovery support services. Google that, Peer Center of Excellence of Recovery, and they'll pop up. And I was thinking of David and Anthony. They're sitting over here. They're one of those 5 RCOs we got in Richmond. David's got a bigger organization than McShin. Now keep in mind, he came through McShin. He used to work for us, you know what I mean? and same with Anthony. And now Anthony is the director of the Virginia Association of Recovery Residences. And the state of Virginia, in this last COVID money, they gave us $10 million for sober living in RCOs. Now that's fabulous. This is where we wanted to be 17 years ago, so we didn't have to come in here raw and try to figure this out. But I didn't ever figure one day I'd be asking my past sponsors for some funding or something, you know? I didn't really envision them being bigger and greater than us, as the story goes, but it's such a rewarding space and place to be in, and that's where you want your state to go. And we'll get more into that in a minute. And I wanted to make sure you understand how valuable our alumni are. And we wouldn't be here if it weren't for our supporters, our alumni. You got to create alumni. And the best way to create alumni is through some really cool events, man. You know, people, addicts, alcoholics, they like to party, you know what I mean? They like to eat, they like to have fun, they like the smoke shack where they get to meet the girl and the boy, you know? You gotta make recovery fun or you ain't gonna go far. And I'm blowing through this because I wanna get to Q&As. We're CAPRS accredited. You know, a lot of states have accreditation, they're very important. You know, Carol used to hound on me a lot about legitimizing data accreditation, and I'm the old school guy, you know, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, proofs in the pudding, look at all these recovering people. What do you mean? Why do we have to justify that citrus fruit cured scurvy in the 1800s and 1900s, you know? But she says we need to find the vitamin C and prove it to the world. But you know, the alumni, the data, very important, correct?
Absolutely, it's important, and whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether if you hear the word GIPRA data from SAMHSA, you want to have your eyes roll back in your head. This is the cost. This is the cost of admission, folks. It's not if we're going to do it. You must do it, and you've just got to figure it out in the way that works in your community. But it has to be done.
Nathan, you got to admit the events have been cool. You do some great activities for advocacy, and you like to eat barbecue.
I do like to eat barbecue.
You know, how important, let me tell you something. At our state capitol, I was the man for years, right? Now, when I see our delegates in the state center, they say, where's Nathan, man?
Nathan?
We want to talk to Nathan. But Nathan's legendary down there.
Well, so they like to eat too. Right, and we can invite them over, and they can get a little barbecue, a little something, and then we can show them a house right there and walk them through the center, you know, and we can tell them that when we get our rights restored, we'll vote for you.
You know,
tell them the barbecue story.
Yeah, you know.
my wife's reminding me one way you can attract change is we've been, believe it or not, kicked out of jails a lot, you know. We get access to jails. We do great programs. They don't like us hugging, having fun. They run us off. They don't understand it.
We reduce their recidivism rate, and if they're a for-profit jail company, they don't like that.
Well, in our own community, our sheriff, our local sheriff, he has a sheriff's event every year. He invites all the churches in, and they get thousands of people there. They asked us to, you know, I said, can we set up a McShin booth? He said, sure. So I showed up. And you got to vision this. Thousands of people come through this Sheriff's Day. They got hundreds of churches and vendors. We bring our smoker, our barbecue smoker, and we cook the best pork barbecue. Honestly, husband Adam, he's the bomb. And we give away free barbecue sliders. So actually, we got all the people there at us, and we make them sign a piece of paper. Would you like to save tax money in your community? Check yes. Do you know much about recovery from addiction? They check no. Do you think recovery would be a good idea for people locked up? They check yes. Long story short, we had 500 people sign these cards. I gave them to the sheriff, you know, that day before he left. Said, look, Sheriff, all these people want a recovery program in the jail. Well, Monday morning he called me up and said, hey, John, Sheriff Hines here. I want you to come on down and start a program in our jail, man. You know. I mean, we educated the voters. You know, we provided, and incidentally, that jail program, you know, that particular one that we were donated for free, their recidivism rate in the jail was 57%, but it dropped down to 32% if they came through our program. That's a pretty big hit.
The idea here is to grow where you're planted. John used barbecue, which was his thing, to basically blackmail people into signing this petition.
Now it's salads and vegetables, but it used to be barbecue.
Yeah, it used to be barbecue. But grow where you're planted. Use what you have. Don't wait for the big nut out of the sky to drop down on you.
You know, collect data. You know, we have 17 years worth of data collection, but we really don't know what to do with it. We were just collecting data and taking numbers. But as you can see up here, it's important to start collecting data. You know what your real metrics are, you know, what the data is saying. And it's amazing. Here's some snapshots of what we got going on. But I think some of the bigger stuff is, you know, when you're running hundreds of people through your organization and you can actually get hundreds of them to respond and you start getting these great numbers back, it's hard to argue with that. We've done 3 studies over the years that we've had a scientist crunch. So we have scientific data studies here, very, very important.
And you may ask yourself, how in the world do y'all get people to respond to these surveys? Again, the geniuses at McShin, myself not included because I run my own business, they gave them a free gym membership if they'll respond to these surveys, okay? Yeah. So you've got to do something to get people to do it because obviously people move, they're very transient. So bring something to the table for people to respond to the data request.
You know, I do want to plug a few things along the way. You got to realize over our 17-year expansion so far, 5 good years prior to that of doing strong advocacy, just gathering intel. As each year would go by, some significant events would happen. You know, we had some good involvement with SAMHSA. We've won some incredible awards, and your name gets thrown around. And I can remember a few years back, this kid calls me out of nowhere. You know, hey, I'm Greg Williams, you know, I'm filming a movie. We'd like to come to town. Pat Taylor said, can we come film your organization? And I say yes to everybody that called. He says, we ain't got much money, you know, can you help us? I said, sure, you can stay at our house if you like. You know, we'll feed you. I hang up. I forget all about that phone call. 3, 4 weeks later, or whatever it was, the kid called me, hey, this is Greg, we're up the street, we're rolling in. And I'm thinking, what did I say? Who's this kid again? He shows up with Jeff Riley and a crew, and they come in there, and I said, this is McShin, I think we're great, you know. They hook me up, wire me up. We ride around for a couple of days. I call my wife and say, oh yeah, by the way, we got some people coming to stay with us. Then you got to go through that tap dance again, you know, like, oh shit. You know, I always forget to remember to remind people of things. But the point is, for those of you who saw that film, The Anonymous People, which I think is an amazing film, that ain't no Hollywood stuff. There is no second takes, man. They went in there, they shot what they shot, and I have to say they made me look really good, man, because there's no way I could have looked that good in that film, even if we planned it. But that's one of many incidents that have happened along the way that have helped our whole movement propel and stay in the mix and do better and do greater. And we could sit here and all of us could tell story after story, but at the end of the day, this is a we thing. We're all in this together. I don't think we've invented really anything that wasn't pre-invented. We were able to just put that recipe together and be of hope to other people, because the truth is we're all hope dealers, every one of us.
That's right.
And we just can't do this right. We can't do it long enough. We can't do enough of it. But I did want to make sure we save plenty of time for, you might have some questions about anything, what you're doing, you know. So, like I said, we can sit here and tell stories for hours and still not go through all the content. But any questions, thoughts, or comments from anybody? And I do want to point, go ahead.
What data system did you guys end up using?
Data system?
Data.
Well, we currently, that's the Arkansas, data. We use the CAPRIS accreditation data platform, and now that Virginia Association of Recovery Residents is blowing up and they're part of NARC, National Association of Recovery Residents Online, they got this new data platform they're using, REDCap, I believe is the name of it. So we got 2 platforms we use, and it's cranking out incredible data. It's very valid, very legit. And so that's what we're using. And I can't stress enough how important it is to find something and use it. That's a great question.
There's one over here.
Actually stood up before I did.
Hey, John, would you scroll back to the QR code, please?
Which one?
The QR code slide.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going backward. There you go. All right,
Okay, I have a question about funding. I live in Huntsville, Alabama, and I don't want anyone else to laugh at me. I'm not in recovery. I don't work in the industry. But in Huntsville, now that it's the #1 city in the state, there is a true need. And our governor allowed money to have 5 crisis centers being built. And one of them is being built in Huntsville. So right next to where the crisis center is being built is our Wellstone, which is our mental health facility, and right around the corner is our kids center. Well, at the corner, there's a liquor store, of course, but there's this building, and it's 175,000 square feet. I've called the man, and he wants $7.5 million for this building. I am Alabama Recovery Advocacy Project, and my thing is, I want this building, because when you have to go down this access road, you'll have to pass this warehouse. So anyone that's going into the crisis center, all they have to do is, in our listening sessions, people in recovery said they need a one-stop shop for every resource that they need, like a courthouse. When you go pay your taxes, you can get your tag and all of that. So my vision, listening to people in recovery, is I want this building for all of our resources in this building. We have too many people doing too many things, and you have them all over the place. Well, if someone doesn't have transportation, how are they going to get there? Well, you can stop.
What's the question?
Funding, how can
All
I
right.
get the money for that building? Because I don't know the resources that everybody else does because I'm not in
Well,
recovery.
let me help you out. I got no idea. But I do know this.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want people to keep laughing at me about this vision, because this is for my community, and that's what people are doing to me. They say, Tammy, you need a business plan. Tammy, why don't you just start small? And I'm like, it's right next to the crisis center. It's right next to the mental health facility. Why can't I have this building?
What's your name again?
Tammy.
Tammy. How many of y'all experience the same stuff in your communities, all right? You're not alone. I don't know of the magic bullet, but I do know this. A hungry mouth gets fed, okay? And a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So go back to your community, be loud and proud, try to jump on every little movement moving in your town. You educate them, and you got to start asking people for things. But we started very small. We're mediocre size, I think, but we got juice in the house, man. We now got our state ponying up. It may not be the ship we envisioned years ago, but it's the one we got, and it's working. So I'm suspecting a $7 million project, a $10 million project. I would go back to your community and start looking to see who's got the money. And then that's what you can do.
I would say also do a little research on the owner of the building.
I've spoken to him.
But look up in the real estate records for your county if they've ever been late on their taxes. Look to see what church they go to, because you're like us in the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Right.
And it may be that some churches would like to kick in on this project. We want to make it easy to help us, right? So you find out if the owner goes to a particular congregation in town and kind of build off of that. And be open that it may not be this building, but you may get a building for having started these conversations.
Well, see, he's a real nice man, and I've spoken to him, and I told him what I wanted the building for.
Yeah.
And like my vision is, I just want the building. But my thing is, I want any person that is in recovery or in active addiction that has electrical, a background.
Mobilize your community. The theme of this, take it back and mobilize those people and stir up what you need to stir up. And God, if it's meant to be, things will happen.
And come see me afterwards. I'll talk to you about putting in an earmark request for it next year, too.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You got others? Cool.
Can you hear me with my mask on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. My name is Daniel Hatcher. I use he, they pronouns. I'm a project coordinator at a startup RCO that's kind of at the it's been in a really transitory, like building it as we're flying sort of place. And some of the progenitors on our board are getting really burnt out. There are board members who aren't really participating as much as others. You know, we have like 2 people who do almost everything on the board, and then other board members that don't show up to board meetings. What I'm curious about is ideas or advice around staff who aren't on the board, eliciting board buy-in or putting the fire under their feet to be more, to rejuvenate, I guess,
So it's a board question. How do you retain board members
Yeah.
and get them fired? My take is you got to have a board that understands we're in a life and death situation. And in our board, I've always had recovering people, family members. I never went after the board where you got to get a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, money people. No, we went in with the real warriors that want things done. And 5% of my board members do 95% of the board work. I mean, it just,
Okay.
that never goes
So that's
away.
common then.
It's
Now-
common.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, I work for the board. I don't own McShin. It's a charity, you know what I mean? So they can fire my butt anytime they want. So I got to make sure I got some board members in there watching my ass, you know what I mean?
Yes,
So,
yes.
but it takes time. It really takes time. I mean, you know, so good luck on that. But you can pick my brain more after this.
Absolutely.
And if the other thing is, if someone comes up with these fabulous ideas, one of your board members, say, so-and-so, I'm so delighted. We're going to put you on the committee to operationalize that idea.
You know, some of our best projects came from a board member's idea, and I said, great, your idea, let's get it done, you
But
know?
like our idea generator is the one who is burnt out at this point because she's just been the one carrying a lot of the load of creating ideas. And then when she gives ideas, other board members don't pick it up. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate it. I'll pick your brain afterwards.
You got to go to the McShin webpage because we got all this stuff on our webpage. You can see my board composition and what it looks like and who's on it. And, you know, we got a great webpage. Surf our webpage and our Facebook page. You had a question, ma'am?
Go back to data collection. I'm just curious, is there any type of data that you find more beneficial to collect? I work with several different communities, and I've been making up surveys and just trying to collect what I can for, you know, data purposes, but I don't really, you know, making it up as I go
I
along.
love Google. Google is like, I mean, well, Google ain't smarter than Carol, but it's close. But you can go to Google and get so much info.
Well, so that's what I've been doing, but I
Right.
didn't know if, like, when you're trying to, because I haven't done anything with this data, right? I keep collecting it, and then I'm like, when I put it together, like, is there any, like, thing I should do? Like, is there certain parts that are more important than other parts, or I don't really
I
know.
think anytime you're trying to get something from somebody, if you can show them how much money they can save, money and votes. You can get this many votes if you do this. You can save this much taxpayers' money. They're not too interested in healing families, saving lives. You're up against special interests, so make sure your data can combat special interests and save money. And you know, data's golden, though.
I would say getting data showing that your services
1 minute, really?
reduced ED
Oh.
visits, data that shows that people stayed out of the criminal justice system, and data that shows that you put people back to work are some of the most popular data sets for lawmakers.
And look at our data. Go to our homepage. Look at our data page. And we're putting data up that gets us results when we have ass out there.
And copy it, use it. That's why we put it up there.
Well, we got time. We got 1 minute left
Thank
on the
you.
clock. We'll do one more.
Hi, I'm Miranda from Indiana, and I've been in recovery since 2015. And I just want to say that your guys' program, like, if we could get stuff like that in Indiana, it would be a dream.
You can.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I am sitting
it's
here,
tough there.
stand in your reality that you can do this. We are not special. We are not
Yeah.
affluent.
That's right.
You can do it.
Indiana
It's
should
really
be
tough.
easy.
It's really tough. We got a lot of people who are mobilized in my county, but just getting everybody together, it's pretty difficult. But so I have a question about when you guys first started. Did you, well, right now, do you guys take state coverage? Do you guys take health insurance for your programs?
We're a non-clinical organization. We get reimbursed for nothing clinical.
Okay. So,
So we don't take Medicaid for peer recovery support services, if that's what you're asking. No.
okay, yeah, so.
Maybe someday, but not
Now, them
not
guys behind you, they mastered that one. They're good at the Medicaid reimbursement houses and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I have other questions, but what's your guys' stance and policies on maintenance medication?
What was the question?
What's McShin's stance on maintenance medications?
Oh, well, we're full fellowship, man.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. We don't discriminate against
All
nothing.
pathways to recovery.
And we're out of time, right?
It's a great question for the next panel. John Shinholzer, Carol McDade, Nathan Mitchell.